Hey, what's going on everybody? Justin here, and in this video I want to start wrapping up my best of, or my favorites of different categories and genres that I've read so far this year. This is going to be the medieval and the Middle Ages kind of history books that I've read in 2024 so far, and then after this all we have left is just kind of my general non-fiction one for things that didn't really fit into like science or history and things like that. So yeah, let's just go ahead and get right into it. Now this one's gonna be a little bit different in the sense I have 3 runners up and like 1 clear winner, whereas usually like on these ones I kind of have just kind of 3 really good ones and I don't really rank them per se. But if you want to see all 8, I think it's 8 Middle Ages books that I've read so far this year, I'll leave a link to that down below and in the corner there if you want to check it out. But first up we have a runner-up, and it's Ravenna by Judith Herron, Capital of Empire, Crucible of Europe. And I've talked about this numerous times, and that's partly why this one's kind of a runner-up. It kind of straddles the line between the classical age and late antiquity and the early Middle Ages. You know, the first third of the book or so is definitely more in like kind of the classical world at the end of like the Roman Empire and stuff. But then like the second half of the book or so is definitely in like kind of more late antiquity, early Middle Ages. I mean, it goes all the way up to like Charlemagne and around 800-ish CE. So definitely counts for like the Middle Ages and stuff. But I feel like I've talked about this book a bunch of times, so I think that's kind of why I was giving it like a runner-up position. I do have a full book review of this one as well, so I'll leave a link to that if you want to just like check out this one individual book. But I really enjoyed it. It's just a really cool way to look at history through the lens of like a city that a lot of people really unless you're kind of like already like a classical scholar, not many people really talk about Ravenna and stuff, but it really was kind of the cultural hub of the Western Mediterranean for several hundred years, especially kind of after Rome was like way in decline. Ravenna was actually the capital of the empire, the Western Roman Empire, for quite a while, and then a lot of the invaders and the barbarians and stuff sort of made it their capital for a while as well. So like I said, it's just kind of an interesting just way to look at things. Plus it's a great balance of political narrative history and military history and all that kind of stuff, with a lot of cultural and like literature and scientific stuff and religious stuff kind of going on, which during late antiquity was really like a lot of the religious strife and stuff. Definitely like kind of a big like kind of motive factor for the era. Alright, next up is another honorable mention, and this is mostly because in one sense it was really good, and I feel like this is like one of the books I've learned the most from, but I can't recommend it really because it's just so dense. And it's Medieval Maritime Warfare by Charles Stanton. I do need to do like a review of this one. But I talked about this in a couple other videos, in that it doesn't look very big. Like, it looks really small. It's only, I think, 280 pages of text. But the thing is, the text is like, the font is tiny, the gutters are tiny, the margins are tiny. It just feels like it just took a lot longer than it really needed to, and it was just it's fact after fact after fact. There's really no breakdown, which if you're not really prepared for that, I mean, I've read so much history book that it doesn't really bother me too much anymore, but even like I noticed it. So like someone kind of maybe not brand new, but just someone like, you know, thinking this is gonna be a nice, you know, breeze through like medieval naval history and everything, it's not going to be that, basically. I do like how the book was broken up into the first half is the Mediterranean world, and the second half is just the North Sea kind of stuff going on, like the Vikings and the Saxons and everything. At first I was kind of skeptical, is this really going to work, just like cutting it in half like that and starting over, but I do feel it worked quite well. Some areas definitely dragged on. Like, I feel like the Italian city-states, when we're dealing with like Venice and Florence and Milan and things like that, and Genoa, it was so many names, so many just like kind of random skirmishes and everything. I felt like that could have been condensed quite a bit, but you start off with like a great history of kind of like the Byzantine Navy, and I felt like learned a ton dealing with the campaigns and the figures around Norman Sicily and stuff. So like I said, I definitely learned a lot, and I definitely feel like I know more about medieval naval warfare. Like, that was just a complete gap in my knowledge base. But like I said, I don't know if I can really recommend it, and that's why it's also a runner-up. And then next up is the third runner-up, and we have Women in the Middle Ages by Francis and Joseph Gies, the lives of real women in a vibrant age of transition. I really love their stuff. I think this is my 5th book by them. The reason this one is a runner-up is I feel like it probably is the weakest one that I've read out of the 5 so far. They're probably most famous for their Lives trilogy, which is Life in Medieval City, Castle, and Village. And those ones are just super ultimate, tremendous social histories of the Middle Ages. Definitely check them out. They even got like a reprinting, like when George R.R. Martin kind of like did a bunch of blurbs about how he used them for like his research and stuff, and all of a sudden like they became popular again and everything. I think a lot of them were written in the 70s and 80s. But this one is divided roughly in half as well. The first half is more of a kind of an overview, kind of chronological history of like different concepts of what it meant to be a woman like throughout the Middle Ages. Whereas the second half is definitely more profiling individual figures and learning kind of about their lives and how they either fit the general mold or how they broke the stereotypes and things like that. Like I said, I definitely feel like it was a good book, but it just like wasn't as good as like some of the other ones that I've read by them. So I don't know, that sounds like a very arbitrary way to make it kind of like an honorable mention, but I do feel like I've seen like 4 or 5 other books that are more contemporary on the history of women in the Middle Ages, so I definitely need to check them out and see if, you know, maybe those ones like being more up to date or just kind of, I don't know, maybe there might be more well written with like different evidence and things like that as well, so I definitely need to check those out. And then lastly, we have the actual like clear winner. Like I said, out of the 8, this one definitely was a step above for sure. And unfortunately, it was one I didn't read in physical copy. Like I just listened to an audiobook like kind of randomly. I think it was in like way in January, the middle of winter and stuff. And it is The Perfect Sword: Reforging of the Dark Ages by Paul Gething. And this one was just a really fun book. First of all, it's about, you know, it's ostensibly about a sword, not even just swords, a sword. So that's really cool. Kind of the gist of it is the Brunbag sword was found, I believe it was in the 60s or 70s, by an archaeologist like doing research on different castles and things like that, but apparently the original researcher put it like in a suitcase or something. And actually this happens quite often, as a lot of artifacts get lost like in the records and in storage and things, and that's what happened to the sword. He kind of wrote some notes on it and everything, but then people just forgot about it because like it wasn't on display or anything, and it was literally in a suitcase. And it wasn't until the author Paul Gething like rediscovered it, I think around 2000 or something, like uncovered it like out of storage and everything, was like, wait, this is like actually like a really good sword. Like how come like people didn't like research this all that much? And the author kind of does a bunch of just, I guess, a historiography of this sword, finding out like maybe who it might have been for, probably like an Anglo-Saxon king and stuff. But kind of going through all the different parts of the sword, you know, where did they get the iron and steel from? Like, you know, how did that actually work? You know, how did blacksmithing work during this kind of like the, you know, the Dark Ages, during the Anglo-Saxon period, you know. But you also go into like different craftsmen as well, such as like jewelers and things dealing with gold and gems, traders, how did you even get those kinds of things, you know, leather workers and stuff like that. And he interviews different like kind of contemporary people that work with some of these things, such as like contemporary like blacksmiths and stuff that kind of try to recreate the styles and like art from back in the day. It just felt like I learned a ton. It was just a really cool way to look at things, kind of a life, like a context, I guess, the life and times of the sword during kind of the late, I guess the late early Middle Ages. Is that a thing? You know, during the Dark Ages and stuff. So like I said, I just really enjoyed it. Lots of really cool vignettes. You learn about like monks and their monasteries in Ireland. Like I said, you learn about different trade networks, the different kinds of like metals that were used, and different techniques that different like armorers and blacksmiths used to like forge things and stuff. But like I said, he kind of goes into all these details and like the scientific evidence for why the sword was like probably one of the, I guess, most technologically advanced like weapons that we've uncovered from this time period and everything. Like I said, just really fun. Learned a lot. Plus, it's about swords. I feel like it just did a really good job. I kind of wish I had like a physical book of this one, but it's definitely the clear, far and away winner. Which is, like I said, it's pretty unusual for me to have like one like that. So I guess I'll be on the lookout in the second half of the year to try to top it. Kind of going forward on Middle Ages history. Let me know if you've read any good books on the Middle Ages recently. I'm always on the lookout for great recs and everything like that. And always remember, whether you're reading books on the medieval period or not, read victoriously.